Commander Park Woo-jin sat in his chair at Earth Defense Command, drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed across the control room. His coffee mug hit the floor as he jumped to his feet. "Sir, we have an urgent transmission from the Galactic Council," shouted Captain Kim Da-hai from her station. Her voice carried a note of surprise that made Park pause. The Council never contacted Earth directly. They usually sent their messages through their fancy diplomatic channels. "Put it through," Park ordered, straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered to life, showing the pale, thin face of Council Speaker Veltar. The alien's usual arrogant expression was gone. Instead, he looked terrified. "Commander Park," Veltar began, his translator making his voice sound robotic. "We need your help. Immediately." Park almost laughed. For 50 years, the Council had treated humans like dangerous children. They limited where human ships could go. They restricted human weapons. They watched every human colony like hawks. Now they needed help? "What's the situation?" Park asked, keeping his voice neutral. The screen changed to show a star map. 3 red areas blinked ominously. "The Devourers have returned," Veltar said. "They have destroyed the Kalani system, the Mordok homeworld, and the trading hub at Centaura. Our fleets, they're gone." Captain Kim Da-hai pulled up the tactical data on her screen. Her face went pale. "Sir, according to this, they lost over 3,000 ships in less than 4 days." Admiral Lee Tae-ho entered the command center, having heard the alarms. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Devourers? I thought they were just stories." "We all did," Veltar replied through the screen. "But they're real, and they're consuming everything, not just the planets. They're eating the stars themselves. Each system they attack goes completely dark." Dr. Choi Min-soo, the head of human xenobiology research, rushed into the room carrying a datapad. "I've been monitoring the deep space sensors," he said breathlessly. "Whatever these devourers are doing, it's not random destruction. They're harvesting something." "Harvesting what?" Admiral Lee asked. "From what I can tell, they're targeting populated worlds first. They seem to be extracting something from living minds before they consume the planets." Dr. Choi's hand shook, slightly as he spoke. "The process is getting faster with each attack." Commander Park looked at the star map again. The 3 destroyed systems formed a rough line pointing toward the core worlds of the Council. "How long before they reach the major population centers?" "At their current speed, maybe 2 weeks," Captain Kim calculated. "Less if they split their forces." Veltar's image flickered as another explosion shook his ship. "Commander, we're prepared to lift all restrictions on human military activity. You can build whatever weapons you want, go wherever you need to go. We just need you to help us." The command center fell silent. Every human in the room understood what this meant. For decades, the Council had feared human military power. They had seen what humans could do in war, and it terrified them. So they had created laws to keep humanity contained. "No human ships beyond the outer rim," Admiral Lee said quietly, listing the restrictions. "No weapons larger than Class 7 energy cannons. No military research into quantum physics. No terraforming of worlds without Council approval. All of that is gone," Veltar said desperately. "Build whatever you want. Do whatever you need to do. Just help us." Commander Park looked at his officers. Captain Kim was already pulling up classified files that had been sealed for decades. Dr. Choi was making notes on his data pad, his mind clearly racing with possibilities. Admiral Lee had a small smile on his face that didn't reach his eyes. "We'll need to contact President Yoon," Park said finally. 2 hours later, they were all sitting in a secure conference room connected to the President's office in Geneva. President Yoon Soo-young appeared on the screen, looking tired but alert. She had been in emergency meetings all morning. "I've reviewed the situation," she said without preamble. "The Council is desperate. Their best ships couldn't even slow these devourers down." "What are your orders, Madam President?" Admiral Lee asked. President Yoon was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady and cold. "For 50 years, they told us we were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted with real military power. They made us promise to be good little humans and play by their rules. She stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the city below. They put us in a cage and told us it was for everyone's safety. But we've been preparing for this day. Every human colony, every research station, every civilian installation has been getting ready for the moment when the galaxy would need us to stop being polite. Commander Park felt a chill run down his spine. He had suspected that Earth's government had been planning something, but he had never imagined the scope of it. "I'm calling an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly," President Yoon continued. "We're going to vote on Resolution 2157. Dr. Choi looked confused. "What's Resolution 2157? Admiral Lee answered, his smile now reaching his eyes. "The unrestricted warfare authorization. It's been sitting in committee for 30 years, waiting for the right moment." "And this is that moment," President Yoon said. "Get me a full tactical assessment of our real capabilities, not what we've shown the Council, what we actually have." Captain Kim's fingers flew over her keyboard. "Sir, if we're showing our real numbers, this changes everything." "That's the idea," President Yoon replied. "The Council wanted us contained because they were afraid of what we might do. Today they're going to find out they were right to be afraid, but not of us." She turned back to face the camera and her expression was fierce. "They should have been afraid of the day we'd have to save them. Send word to all human military commanders. The gloves are off. Show them why they kept us in chains." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Commander Park looked around at his officers, seeing excitement and determination in their faces. "Well," he said finally, "I guess we're about to find out what humans can do when we're really trying to help." Outside the command center windows, human ships were already moving. Not the small patrol vessels the Council was used to seeing, but massive vessels that had been disguised as cargo haulers and research ships. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what they had been hiding. The age of human politeness was over. General Nam Kyung-min stood on the observation deck of what the Council thought was a simple mining station. Around him, massive blast doors were opening for the first time in decades. The sound of machinery echoed through the vast chamber as hidden hangars revealed their contents. "How long have we been preparing for this?" asked Council observer Zilnok, his four eyes wide with shock as human warships emerged from concealment. 53 years, 4 months, and 16 days, Engineer Kang Subin replied, checking her data pad. "Ever since the Council first restricted our military expansion." The observer's translator crackled as he tried to process what he was seeing. Ships that dwarfed anything in the Council fleet were sliding out of hidden bays. These weren't the small patrol vessels humanity was allowed to build. These were monsters. "But our sensors never detected any of this," Zilnok protested. Kang Subin smiled. "That's because we got really good at hiding things. Every mining station has a military core. Every research facility has weapons labs. Every civilian colony has been building ships." General Nam activated his communicator. "All stations, this is command. Execute Protocol 7. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Agricultural stations revealed missile silos hidden beneath crop fields. Asteroid mining operations opened up to show massive shipyards carved into rock. Even the luxury hotels orbiting Earth's moon split apart to reveal military command centers." "This is impossible," Zilnok whispered. "Our intelligence networks would have detected this level of construction. Your intelligence networks only looked for what they expected to find," General Nam explained. "You expected us to build weapons that looked like your weapons. You expected us to follow your ideas about what military technology should be." He gestured to one of the emerging ships. It looked wrong compared to Council vessels. Instead of smooth curves and elegant lines, it was angular and brutal. Weapons jutted out at odd angles. The hull was covered in what looked like construction equipment. "That's the chaos theory," Engineer Kang said proudly. "Our newest battleship class. It doesn't use energy shields like Council ships. Instead, it has adaptive armor that learns from each hit." "And the weapons?" Zilnok asked nervously. "Quantum torpedoes that phase through enemy shields. Fighter craft powered by controlled micro-black holes. and the main gun creates localized gravitational anomalies. Colonel OG-1's voice crackled over the comm system. General, first contact with Devourer forces in the Altarian system. Permission to engage? Permission granted, Colonel. Show them how humans fight. The tactical display lit up with data from the battle. Colonel O's strike force had reached the Altarian system just as a Devourer fleet was preparing to consume the gas giant Altara Prime. Council forces would try to protect the planet, General Nam explained to the observer. They would form defensive lines and try to minimize damage to civilian populations. On the screen, they watched as Colonel O's ships did something completely different. Instead of protecting the gas giant, they flew straight toward it, firing weapons into its atmosphere. What are they doing? Zilnok demanded. Turning the planet into a weapon, Engineer Kang replied calmly. The human ships had destabilized the gas giant's core. The massive planet began to expand rapidly, creating an enormous energy wave that swept through the Devourer formation. Enemy ships that had been advancing confidently suddenly found themselves caught in a stellar explosion. The Devourers are retreating, came Colonel O's excited voice over the comm. Repeat, enemy forces are withdrawing from the system. General Nam nodded with satisfaction. First Devourer retreat in recorded history. But the real surprise came when Captain Lim Dong-hyuk's boarding teams hit a damaged Devourer ship. The Council observer watched in horror as human soldiers used weapons that no civilized species would think to employ. Are those construction tools? Zilnok asked, watching as humans wielded plasma cutters and gravitational manipulators against Devourer defenders. Humans use whatever works, General Nam explained. Council military doctrine says you fight with approved weapons in approved ways. Human military doctrine says you win by any means necessary. The boarding teams moved through the Devourer ship like a force of nature. When energy weapons failed to penetrate Devourer armor, they used industrial mining lasers. When corridors were too heavily defended, they simply cut new paths through the ship's hull. This is barbaric, Zilnok protested. This is effective, General Nam corrected. Captain Lim's team has captured more intelligence about Devourer technology in 1 hour than Council forces gathered in weeks of fighting. Engineer Kang pulled up another display showing human industrial output. We've been preparing for total war. Every human world is now producing military hardware. We can build ships faster than the Devourers can destroy them. But why hide all of this? The observer asked. If you had this power, why didn't you use it before? General Nam was quiet for a moment. Because we didn't need to. The galaxy was at peace. We were content to follow Council rules and be good galactic citizens. But we also remembered what happens when humans aren't prepared for war. He called up historical data on the screen. Images of destroyed human colonies from the early days of space expansion. Ships lost to alien raiders before the Council was formed. We learned that the galaxy is a dangerous place. So we prepared. We built everything we might need for the day when being polite wouldn't be enough. Ambassador Ryu Haijin's face appeared on the communication screen. He was broadcasting from the Council chambers where emergency sessions were running around the clock. General, I'm getting reports from across Council space. They're calling our tactics unnecessarily destructive and chaotic beyond reason. And, what did you tell them? General Nam asked. Ambassador Ryu smiled grimly. I told them that for 50 years they kept us contained because they feared what we might do. I told them they were right to be afraid, but they were afraid of the wrong thing, which was, they should have been afraid of the day we'd have to save them. On the tactical display, more human fleets were moving out, not toward defensive positions, but straight into Devourer-controlled space. Each fleet commanded by officers who had spent their entire careers planning for this moment. Where are they going? Zilnok asked. To end this war, General Nam replied. The Council tried to fight the Devourers with Council tactics, defensive formations, minimal collateral damage, rules of engagement. Engineer Kang highlighted the human fleet movements. We're not fighting by their rules. We're taking the battle to the enemy. Every Devourer world, every Devourer fleet, every Devourer installation is now a target. But the civilian populations on those worlds were consumed by the Devourers long ago, General Nam said coldly. There are no civilians in Devourer space, only targets. As the observer watched, human forces struck at dozens of Devourer positions simultaneously. Each attack was different, each one breaking some rule of civilized warfare. Ships rammed into enemy formations. Planets were turned into weapons. Space itself was twisted and bent to serve human tactics. You're all insane, Zilnok whispered. General, Nam looked at him with cold eyes. No. We're just really good at controlled chaos. And after 50 years of practice, we're ready to show the galaxy what human military doctrine really looks like. The first phase of humanity's real war was beginning. Admiral Bei Seung-ho stood before the holographic display showing the entire galaxy. Red zones marked Devourer-controlled space. Blue zones showed Council territory. And now, for the first time, green markers indicated human offensive operations, deep in enemy space. Operation Pandora is now active, he announced to his staff. All restrictions on human military operations are lifted. All experimental weapons are cleared for field testing. All classified projects are now operational. Dr. Song Yeonju looked up from her research station, excitement clear in her voice. Admiral, I've made a breakthrough in understanding how the Devourers operate. Show me. The display changed to show brainwave patterns. The Devourers feed on organized thought patterns. That's why Council species were so easily consumed. Their military minds are disciplined, ordered, predictable. And human minds, Dr. Song smiled. Chaotic. We think in ways that don't make sense to organized alien minds. When Devourers try to feed on human thought patterns, they get confused. Admiral Bei studied the data. Are you saying human thoughts are toxic to them? More than that. Our mental chaos actually causes them psychological feedback. It's like trying to eat poison for them. Captain Han Woo-seok's voice crackled over the communication system. Admiral, we're in position at the Mordock system, ready to begin Phase 2 of Pandora. The Mordock system had been one of the first Devourer conquests. The enemy had consumed the planets and was now using the system as a staging area for further attacks. Council forces had tried 3 times to retake it and failed each time. Proceed with the mission, Captain, Admiral Bei ordered. What happened next would become legendary in galactic military history. Instead of attacking the Devourer fleets directly, Captain Han's forces targeted the system's smaller moon. Using gravitational manipulators, they knocked it out of orbit and sent it crashing into the primary Devourer hive world. But that wasn't the terrifying part. Impact in 30 seconds, Captain Han reported. Initiating temporal distortion field, the moon struck the planet with incredible force. At the moment of impact, human ships activated experimental technology that created a localized space-time distortion. The explosion was trapped in a temporal loop, happening over and over again. My God, whispered Council Observer Velnar from the command bridge. You've trapped their entire fleet in a time bubble. The Devourer ships in orbit are stuck watching their hive world be destroyed repeatedly, Captain Han confirmed. They can't escape the temporal field, and every loop drives them further into madness. Admiral Bei nodded with satisfaction. That's one hive world that won't be consuming any more systems. But Commander John Mi-kyung was already implementing the next phase of the plan. Her specialty was psychological warfare, and she had developed tactics that would have horrified Council, military leaders. Beginning cultural bombardment of enemy positions, she reported. Cultural bombardment? Observer Velnar asked. Dr. Song explained while monitoring the results. Commander John is broadcasting human music, art, literature, and cultural data directly at Devourer ships. Their minds are adapted to consuming ordered civilizations, but human culture is chaotic, Admiral Bei finished. Unpredictable, creative in ways that make no logical sense. On the tactical display, they watched as Devourer ships began to behave erratically. Some broke formation for no apparent reason. Others started firing randomly at empty space. The exposure to human creativity is causing system malfunctions in their hive mind, Dr. Song reported excitedly. They literally cannot process our cultural chaos. What kind of cultural data are you using? Observer Velnar asked nervously. Commander Jian's voice came over the comm with obvious amusement. Human children's songs, abstract art, comedy shows, and poetry. Also, reality television and social media posts. The reality television seems to be particularly effective, Dr. Song added. Their minds cannot understand why humans would create such content. General Hong Chang-su coordinated the largest human offensive yet from his command ship. 12 Devourer systems were under simultaneous attack, each using different tactics that had never been seen before in galactic warfare. Fleet 7 is using weaponized stellar manipulation to turn enemy suns into variable stars, he reported. Fleet 3 is deploying gravity mines that create random gravitational anomalies. Fleet 12 is using... He paused to double-check his report. They're using weaponized asteroids filled with human music. Is it working? Admiral Bay asked. Beyond our wildest expectations. The Devourers are retreating from all 12 systems. Some of their ships are even attacking each other. Observer Velnar watched the tactical displays in stunned silence. Everything he thought he knew about warfare was being proven wrong. This is impossible. You're violating every principle of civilized military conduct. That's the point, Admiral Bay replied. Civilized military conduct failed. The entire Council fleet was destroyed following civilized rules. So we threw out the rules. Dr. Song looked up from her instruments with excitement. Admiral, I'm detecting something incredible. The Devourer hive mind is showing signs of fragmentation, meaning individual Devourers are starting to think for themselves instead of following the collective will. Our chaos is breaking down their mental unity. This was more than anyone had hoped for. For millions of years, the Devourers had operated as a perfect collective, each individual completely synchronized with the whole. Now, for the first time in their history, some of them were thinking independently. How is this possible? Observer Velnar demanded. Human minds don't work like alien minds, Dr. Song explained. We're individuals first, collective second. When we expose them to human thought patterns, we accidentally taught them about individualism. Captain Han's voice came over the comm again, now from a different system. Admiral, we have Devourer ships requesting... This can't be right. They're requesting asylum? Admiral Bay stared at the communication display. Repeat that, Captain. 5 Devourer vessels have broken away from their fleet and are broadcasting surrender signals. They say they no longer wish to be part of the collective. The command center fell silent. In the entire recorded history of galactic conflict, no Devourer had ever surrendered. They fought to the death, or until their hive mind called them back. What do we do with them? Observer Velnar asked weakly. We do what humans always do, Admiral Bay replied. We improvise. Commander John's psychological warfare had evolved beyond simple cultural bombardment. She was now broadcasting human philosophical debates, scientific discussions, and even arguments between human politicians. The exposure to human disagreement and discussion is teaching them that it's possible to have different opinions, she reported. Some Devourers are questioning orders for the first time in their species' history. General Hong coordinated with the new Devourer defectors, learning more about enemy capabilities in one day than the Council had learned in months of fighting. They're telling us about Devourer weaknesses we never knew existed, he reported. Apparently their greatest fear isn't being destroyed in battle. It's thinking for themselves. Admiral Bay looked at the galaxy map again. The red zones were shrinking. Not because the Devourers were being destroyed, but because they were abandoning their positions to flee from human psychological warfare. How long before we reach their primary hive worlds? He asked. At current advance rates, maybe a week, General Hong replied. But sir, I don't think we'll need to fight for them. Why not? Dr. Song looked up from her research with amazement. Because the Devourers are fighting each other now. Our chaos has spread through their entire network. They're having their first civil war in millions of years. Observer Velnar slumped in his chair. You didn't just defeat them. You changed them into something else entirely. Admiral Bay nodded grimly. We turned them into individuals. For a hive mind species, That's more terrifying than any weapon we could have built. Humanity had done the impossible. They hadn't just won the war. They had fundamentally changed the nature of their enemy. Fleet Admiral Yang Jinwu received the sealed orders at 800 hours Galactic Standard Time. His hands shook slightly as he opened the encryption. The message was short, but its implications were staggering. Authorization granted for Operation Wildcard. May God have mercy on us all. President Yoon. He looked around the secure briefing room at his senior staff. These were officers who had seen humanity's most classified weapons in action. They had watched human tactics break the Devourer advance and fragment their hive mind. But even they didn't know about Wildcard. Dr. Shinbora, please explain the science, Admiral Yang said quietly. Dr. Shin stood up, her face pale. Operation Wildcard is based on theoretical research we hoped we'd never have to use. We've found a way to create a cascade failure in spacetime itself. Captain Kim Tae-jun leaned forward. What does that mean in practical terms? We can delete an entire solar system from reality, Dr. Shin replied. Not destroy it, remove it, completely from the universe. It would be as if it never existed. The room fell silent. Even by human standards, this was extreme. The target is the Devourer Emperor's primary hive world. Admiral Yang continued. Intelligence suggests that their entire species is controlled from this central location. If we remove it from reality, the entire Devourer race would lose coordination, finished Commander Park So-young. They would become completely individualized, with no collective memory or purpose. But, Dr. Shin added grimly, there's a significant risk. The cascade failure could spread beyond the target system. We might accidentally delete other nearby systems, possibly including inhabited ones. General, Moon Hyun-sik studied the tactical data. What are the odds of containment? 63%, Dr. Shin admitted. We've never tested anything this powerful. Admiral Yang activated the secure communication system. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The fragmentation of the Yuao Devourer hive mind was accelerating. Individual devourers were breaking free from the collective in increasing numbers, but this was creating new problems. Sir, reported Major Seo Jun-ho from the Intelligence Division. We've discovered something disturbing about the Devourer's origin. Show me. The display changed to show ancient historical data recovered from captured Devourer vessels. They weren't always destroyers. 3 million years ago, they were a peaceful species called the Kethmori. They were explorers and scientists. Admiral, Yang studied the data. What changed them? They discovered chaos theory and decided it was the root of all suffering in the universe, Major Seo explained. They believed that if they could eliminate all unpredictability, all randomness, all individual thought, they could create perfect universal peace. So they turned themselves into a hive mind? More than that. They decided to convert every species in the galaxy to their way of thinking. Those who resisted were consumed. Their planets were stripped of resources to fuel further expansion. Dr. Shin looked up from her calculations. They became everything they originally fought against. In trying to eliminate chaos, they became the ultimate source of destruction. Commander Park So-young raised her hand. If we use Wildcard and delete their homeworld, what happens to the individual devourers who have already broken free? Unknown, Dr. Shin replied. They might retain their individuality, or they might revert to their original Kethmori nature, or they might die. That's a risk we have to take, Admiral Yang decided. Begin preparations for alarms suddenly blared throughout the command ship. Communications officer Lee Hyunwoo looked up from his station in shock. Admiral, we're receiving a direct transmission from the Devourer Emperor itself. The main screen flickered to life, showing something that chilled everyone in the room. The Devourer Emperor was massive, easily the size of a small space station. Its form was a grotesque combination of organic and mechanical components, countless smaller devourers integrated into its structure. Humans, it spoke, its voice a harmony of millions of individual devourers speaking in unison. You have accomplished what no species has done in 3 million years. You have made us feel fear. Admiral Yang stepped forward. What do you want? To offer you a choice. Your chaotic nature is interesting. Instead of consuming your minds, we offer to preserve them. Join us willingly, and we will spare your homeworld. We will teach you the peace of perfect order. And if we refuse? The Emperor's form shifted, revealing weapons of unimaginable power. Then we will do what we have done to every other chaotic species. We will consume you completely. Admiral Yang looked at his officers, seeing determination in their faces. I need to consult with my government. You have one standard day, the Emperor replied. Choose wisely, humans. Order or oblivion. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Within hours, President Yoon's response came through the secure channels. Tell the Emperor we have a counteroffer for him. Admiral Yang opened the communication channel again. The Emperor's massive form filled the screen. You have decided to accept order? The Emperor asked. We have a different proposal, Admiral Yang replied steadily. You want us to give up chaos and become predictable. Here's our counteroffer. We're about to do something so chaotic and unpredictable that even we don't know if it will work. The Emperor's form rippled with what might have been confusion. Explain. Dr. Shin stepped forward. We've developed a way to inject pure human consciousness directly into your hive mind network. Instead of you consuming our thoughts, we're going to flood your collective with human individualism. Impossible. Our network cannot be compromised by inferior organic minds. Commander Park So-young smiled grimly. That's what makes this so chaotic. We're not trying to destroy your network. We're trying to teach every single devourer in your collective how to think for themselves simultaneously. The process will be irreversible, Dr. Shin added. Every devourer will experience human emotions, human creativity, human independence. They'll remember what it was like to be Keth Mori. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. When it spoke, again its harmonious voice had cracks in it, individual voices breaking through. You would destroy everything we have built. 3 million years of perfect unity, reduced to chaos. We would give your people back their freedom, Admiral Yang corrected. The choice to be individuals again. That is not a gift, that is a curse. That's what makes us human, Admiral Yang replied. We think the right to choose, even if it means choosing badly, is more important than perfect unity. Colonel Moon. Yunsik activated the tactical display showing human fleet positions. We've surrounded all of your primary hive worlds. Operation Wildcard is ready to proceed, but we'd prefer to use the consciousness injection method. Your success rate? Dr. Shin checked her data. For consciousness injection, 97% success rate for individual conversion. For cascade deletion, 63% containment probability. The Emperor's form began to shift and change as individual devourers within it started to assert their own thoughts. You offer us the choice between chaos and extinction. We offer you the choice between freedom and extinction, Admiral Yang corrected. That's the most human thing we can do. The communication channel filled with overlapping voices as the Emperor's perfect harmony broke down. Individual devourers were already beginning to experience human thoughts transmitted during the negotiation. What is this feeling? One voice asked. I remember my name, said another. We were not always destroyers, whispered a third. Admiral Yang watched as the most powerful entity in the galaxy began to fragment not from weapons or warfare, but from the simple exposure to human individuality. Choose quickly, he said softly. Because whether you decide or not, the galaxy is about to see what happens when humans stop being polite. Admiral Lee Taeho watched the quantum entanglement generators power up across the human fleet. Operation Wildcard was no longer about destroying the devourers. It had become something far more ambitious and terrifying. All ships report ready. For consciousness injection, reported Captain Kim De-hai from her station. Quantum tunneling arrays are aligned with the Devourer hive mind network. Dr. Choi Min-soo, what are we about to inject into their collective? Admiral Lee asked. Dr. Choi looked up from his monitoring station, his face a mixture of excitement and terror. Everything that makes us human. Individual thoughts, personal memories, creative impulses, the ability to disagree, the desire for freedom. But most importantly, the capacity to question authority. And the risks? We don't know. We're essentially performing surgery on a collective consciousness that spans millions of individual minds across the galaxy. It could free them all, or it could drive them completely insane. Commander Park Woo-jin's voice crackled over the communication system from his position near the Devourer homeworld. Admiral, the Emperor is trying to sever connections to its outer colonies. It knows what we're about to do. Too late, Dr. Choi reported. The quantum entanglement is already established. Every devourer in the galaxy is about to experience what it feels like to be an individual human being. Admiral Lee took a deep breath. Execute Operation Wildcard. Across human space, quantum generators activated simultaneously. The effect was invisible but immediate. Through quantum entanglement, human consciousness patterns began flooding into the Devourer hive mind network. The results were spectacular. Admiral, Dr. Choi called out in amazement. I'm reading massive neural activity spikes throughout the Devourer network. Individual brain patterns are separating from the collective. On the main screen, they watched as Devourer ships across multiple star systems suddenly stopped moving in formation. Instead of acting as a unified fleet, individual ships began making their own decisions. This is Captain Kim Da-hai to all human forces, came the announcement. Devourer vessels are breaking formation galaxy-wide. Some are fighting each other. Others are just floating in space. Dr. Choi monitored the consciousness injection process. The individual devourers are experiencing human emotions for the first time in 3 million years. Fear, joy, curiosity, anger, love. Their collective mind cannot process these feelings. Admiral Lee activated the communication channel to speak directly to the fragmenting Devourer Emperor. What he saw shocked him. The massive entity was literally coming apart as individual devourers within its structure began asserting their independence. What have you done to us? The Emperor asked, but its voice was no longer harmonious. Dozens of individual voices spoke at once, each expressing different emotions. We gave you back your freedom, Admiral Lee replied simply. I remember my original name, said one voice that separated from the others. I was called Keth Vos. I was a scientist. I studied stellar formation. I remember art, said another voice. We used to create beautiful things before we decided beauty was chaotic and had to be eliminated. I remember love, whispered a third voice. I had a mate and children. We gave them up for the unity of the collective. Commander Park Woo-jin reported from his position. Admiral, entire Devourer fleets are surrendering. They're requesting asylum and asking to be taught how to be individuals again. But the most shocking report came from Captain Kim Da-hai. Sir, some Devourer commanders are fighting against their own hive ships. They're trying to free other Devourers who are still connected to the collective. Dr. Choi looked up from his instruments in wonder. It's working beyond our wildest expectations. The consciousness injection has created a cascade effect. Individual Devourers are teaching other Devourers about independence. General Nam Kyungmin's fleet had surrounded the primary Devourer stronghold, but instead of a battle, they found themselves coordinating a massive rescue operation. We have former Devourer vessels working alongside human ships, he reported. They're helping us locate and free other members of their species who are still trapped in collective nodes. The transformation was happening faster than anyone had thought possible. Within hours, the Devourer empire that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years was dissolving into millions of individuals, each rediscovering what it meant to think for themselves. Admiral, Dr. Choi announced, I'm detecting something incredible. The freed Devourers aren't just becoming individuals, they're remembering their original species identity. They're becoming Kethmori again. Admiral Lee watched the tactical display as former Devourer worlds began broadcasting new signals. Not the cold, uniform transmissions of the hive mind, but chaotic individual messages. This is former Devourer Unit 7432891, came one transmission. I remember my name now. I am Keth Sara, and I was a teacher before we lost ourselves to the collective. I want to teach again. I want to help others learn. This is former Devourer Fleet Commander 2156, came another. I am Kethedron, and I remember studying art and music. Can someone please explain to me what humans call jazz? I find it fascinatingly chaotic. Commander Park So-young coordinated with the newly freed Kethmori to establish communication protocols. They're asking for help understanding concepts they forgot during their time as Devourers. Things like personal relationships, creative expression, and individual decision-making. What about the ones who don't want to be free? Admiral Lee asked. Dr. Choi checked his readings. There are still some Devourers fighting the consciousness injection, trying to maintain collective unity. But they're losing the battle. Individual thought is spreading through their network faster than they can contain it. The former Devourer Emperor, now a collection of separate individuals, made one final transmission. Humans, it said, each voice, now distinct and individual. We spent 3 million years trying to eliminate chaos from the universe. We believed order was superior to freedom. You have shown us we were wrong. What will you do now? Admiral Lee asked. We will learn, replied the voice that had been the primary consciousness of the Emperor. We will remember what we lost when we chose unity over individuality. We will try to repair the damage we caused to the galaxy. And those species you consumed? Gone. We cannot bring back the dead, but we can ensure that no other species suffers as they did. We can teach others about the value of chaos, of individual thought, of the freedom to choose. Ambassador Ryu Haijin's image appeared on the communication screen, broadcasting from the reformed Galactic Council chambers. Admiral, we've received formal requests from 847 former Devourer colonies to join the Galactic Council as independent member species. They want to learn how to be part of a galactic community without losing their individual identities. And the Council's response? Unanimous approval. They're calling it the most successful rehabilitation of a hostile species in galactic history. Admiral Lee looked around his command center at officers who had just witnessed the impossible. They had taken humanity's greatest enemy and turned them into allies through the simple act of teaching them to think for themselves. 6 months later, President Yoon Soo-young sat in her office reading reports from across the galaxy. Human colonies were expanding rapidly, but now they were doing so alongside former Devourer worlds that had become centers of art, science, and individual expression. Madam President, came a voice over the intercom. You have a visitor. The door opened to reveal a being that had once been part of the Devourer collective. It looked like a cross between an insect and a plant, but its movements were fluid and graceful rather than mechanical. President Yoon, I am Kethmiran, formerly part of the Devourer Scientific Division. I have come to thank you. For what? For showing us that chaos is not the enemy of peace. You taught us that true peace comes not from eliminating differences, but from celebrating them. President Yoon smiled. What will you do now? I am starting a school. I want to teach young Kethmori about the beauty of individual thought. I also want to learn more about human culture. Specifically, I am fascinated by your concept of controlled chaos. President Yoon stood and walked to her window, looking out at a city where humans and former Devourers now worked side by side. Controlled chaos is what makes us human. It's the ability to be unpredictable when we need to be, but focused when it matters. And you believe this is a strength? I know it is. For 50 years, the galaxy tried to contain us because they thought our chaos was dangerous. They were right to be worried, but for the wrong reasons. Our chaos isn't dangerous to our friends. It's dangerous to anyone who tries to eliminate freedom and individual thought from the universe. Kethmiran made a sound that might have been laughter. The galaxy is very different now because of what you did. No, President Yoon corrected gently. The galaxy is different because of what you chose to do. We just gave you back the ability to choose. She turned to look at her visitor. The question is, what will all of us choose to do next? Through her office window, she could see human and Kethamori children playing together in the park below, creating games that followed no rules except the ones they made up as they went along. It was perfectly chaotic. It was perfectly human. And now it was perfectly normal for the new galaxy they had all